What's going on, party people? College hoops heads. I'm already mixing up my intros. College hoop heads. My name is Stephen Bagel. We are live on both the Center Hub's YouTube page as well as our X/Twitter page. As you guys know, we've been promoting this all week. I'm here with Andrew Schaefer, who is our guest to help talk about today's magazine preview conferences. That was a mouthful, guys. I'm here with, as you guys know, my one and done co-host, John Simpson. John, ACC ties. Andrew, ACC ties. Andrew's an alumni of an ACC school, former Big East school, by the way. We are going to be doing the ACC and the OVC. You could pre-order our season preview magazine in the link below, whether you're watching on YouTube or X. You can find it. $12. Go purchase it. Be well with your money. Will be out October 13th. Andrew, let's start with you. How are you doing today?
I'm good. Excited to talk about the two leagues. And you guys should all go buy the magazine. Got a lot of people working behind the scenes, doing some great stuff, including the two guys on here. And, hopefully you guys all go buy it and go read it. And I'm excited to talk about the two conferences I'm working on.
So, John, I did not forget about you, but what we are going to be doing is every Tuesday and Thursday, about this time, 7 p.m. Eastern, we are going to be with another writer from the magazine talking about their conferences. Just to give perspective of all the hard work that's going into this. Like Andrew, for example, OVC, he's already interviewed 8 out of the 11 coaches in the conference. Like, we are putting legwork into this thing. John is going to be doing the Missouri Valley and the CAA. He's been actively doing his writings and his coaching interviews. And we're going to have John on to preview those conferences in the next few weeks. John, how you doing today?
Hey, I'm doing great. Love getting to be on here and talk with you guys about college basketball. I know Andrew's been working hard on these conferences. So excited to hear some of his perspective. And I love talking about ACC basketball.
So, yeah, let's start with that. We actually wanted to do a one and done our ACC preview this year with Andrew. Maybe we just put this on the feed as our ACC preview potentially. But nonetheless, John is a Duke Blue Devil fan, as everyone famously knows. Andrew is an alumni of Syracuse University. Very different ends of the ACC right now, in my opinion. Andrew, I'm going to start with you because you've been putting in the majority of the legwork in the ACC, churning away, working so hard on this magazine. You've even had the opportunity. How many ACC coaches have you interviewed now? 3?
I've interviewed Coach Capel at Pitt. I've done Coach Madsen at Cal. So I've only done 2. And then I had someone step in for me for Stanford, for Kyle Smith. So we've actually done 3. I had Conrad Pasquale, who works for us, step in because I was out sick.
And we're supposed to get, maybe a couple more, hopefully a couple more. We've already interviewed over 100 coaches for this publication. So that's been absolutely incredible. Thank you to all the schools that have been willing to work with us. Andrew, what is your sentiment of the ACC this year? That's without giving away too much, because again, we do want people to read our blood, sweat, and tears. But I want to get your opinion. I'm going to get John's opinion. Like, is it Duke and everybody else like it was last year, or Louisville's a borderline top 10 projected team? Like, what's your sentiment of the top of the ACC?
I think, listen, you start with Duke, right? Final 4 team last year. Obviously, Cooper Flagg did his thing, but I actually, I think Louisville is going to challenge them. Louisville's backcourt is elite, and what Pat Kelsey has done in the portal is tremendous. When you think about Isaac McNeely from Virginia, Ryan Conwell, Xavier, Adrian Woolley from Kennesaw State. Duke has a bit of a question mark at point guard with Caleb Foster or Caden Boozer. Who do they decide to go with? I was shocked that Caleb Foster didn't put his name in the portal. I give him a ton of credit for coming back and trying to win that job. Duke also has questions at center. Patrick Ngangba was a guy that didn't play a ton last year. He is now expected to take on the role of what Malawach did last year for them. And Malik Brown is another key piece for them also who's coming back. So I think Louisville can absolutely challenge Duke. There's obviously some sleeper teams in the league. NC State is another one who's had a tremendous portal, with Will Wade being hired. Virginia's done a great job with Ryan Odom. obviously North Carolina, with Hubert Davis will probably be in the mix there. But I really believe it's Duke and then Louisville. I think those are the clear-cut top two for me. And then I think there's kind of a gap there between that group.
John, obviously we already started doing the Missouri Valley and is it Colonial Athletic Conference now? What's Coastal? Now, I know they flip-flop names. The CAA, but obviously, given your ACC pedigree and knowledge, no one else I'll be hosting this episode with, by the way, John. You look very handsome today. What's your overall sentiment of the ACC? Like, do you agree with Andrew? Like, how close really are Duke and Louisville? And before you answer that, I'm going to throw a second question at you. Who is the number 3 team in this conference behind those two, if that is the top two? And Andrew, I'm going to ask you the same question. I'll give my opinion.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, I absolutely agree. Those are the top two. Given a lot of what Andrew said, I think that looking at what all Duke has brought back from a team that all year was one of the best teams in the country, even, won the ACC tournament without Cooper Flagg. Granted, some of those guys went in the lottery too this year. Looking at the roster they put together, I think, I think Caleb Foster came back, so he's going to be a starter on this team. I think he's going to get a lot of minutes on this team. Guys like Isaiah Evans, who had some tremendous games last year. Malik Brown, I know he had some injury trouble last year, but he was, incredible in the post. And you got Gonga coming back. I think he's going to have another big step. I really like this team top to bottom. I think this is going to be a really deep. Then you got Kamenia. I mean, I think it's going to be a deep team. And a lot of guys are going to be able to play. But I can't say that about Duke and not say the same thing about Louisville because, a lot of similarities in this team, except this time Louisville might have the best freshman in the country. And Mikael Brown, these are obviously the top two teams to me in this conference, but I don't want to say that overlooking some of the other squads in here. Again, like NC State brought over a tremendous team in the portal, an incredible squad that Will Wade put together as we expected him to. I really like Virginia this year. Jai Lucas is doing good things with Miami. He's brought some good guys in there. And then another kind of a deep sleeper team for me that I've been thinking about this year is Notre Dame. They didn't have a great team last year, a great season last year, but they were better than they were the year before. And they're bringing back a lot. They got Shrewsbury coming back, Marcus Burden coming back. They've got some good young guys that have been developed on that squad. I'm not as an ACC fan, I'm not overlooking Notre Dame as a team that really could possibly make some noise this year in the ACC conference. But if I had to pick a third best team, I'm probably going to say Virginia. I really like the roster that Coach Adams Miller put together in Virginia. I think it's a very balanced team. You got Dalen Hall, Jakari White. I mean, I think the experience is there. Malik Thomas, the points are going to be there. Some real legitimate bigs in Grunlow and Yonso
Jay Ritter
from Kansas State.
DeRitter.
Yeah, DeRitter. I mean, that's going to be a hell of a team.
So, Andrew, I'm going to ask you the same question in terms of who we think the third best team in the ACC might be beside those two. John, I do want to ask you one more question, though. I'm not spoiling it completely, but we are doing a top 100 players in the magazine. And basically averaging out between all the rows I want to add to it, the top 100 players average out to get our finalized top 100. Either way, I completed mine, and it's funny. I have one Duke player in my top 100 best players, which is obviously Cam Boozer. I think I have him 3 or 4 or 5, somewhere there range. Maxwell Geiger from the Center Hub. Also completed his top 100. He has 6 Duke guys in the top 100 best players in college basketball. So those are two completely ends of the spectrum. I think Maxwell's has a little bit more projection baked in terms of expecting growth when mine was more, okay, this is what the guys are now. If Duke is going to be a legit national title contender, Cam Boozer aside, who do you think would need to step up to be, in that top 100 player, even maybe top 50, top 40, top 30 range?
I mean, I think it's absolutely got to be Caleb Foster.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I think Caleb is a guy with experience who's been on this team, who knows the system, who is a shyer guy, I think, and that they're really going to have to kind of depend on to have the ball in his hands a lot this season and to be a leader on the court and to take another step offensively and defensively.
Andrew, I'm going to ask you that same question. Then we'll talk about, who you think might either be a dark horse or the third best team in the ACC. If Duke is going to be this national title contender that we typically see year after year, who aside from Cam Boozer do you think really needs to step up?
Yeah, for me, it's Isaiah Evans. I mean, he's got to be the second scorer on this team. I mean, there is no way around it because Caleb Foster has not proven enough to be a legitimate scorer. He's been inconsistent. Listen, Caden Boozer is going to be very good. Okay, the freshman point guard coming in, he's going to be very good. Dame Sarr should be good. Kameni, like these freshmen are going to be very good. I don't know if it'll be as good as last year's class because that was like a class that seems like generational.
Yeah.
But I would say Isaiah Evans because I think Cam Boozer is going to need help scoring the ball. Like it can't just be him. He's going to because Ngangba's not a scorer, Foster's not a scorer, so you're going to need some help from some guys. I think Isaiah Evans has a chance to potentially be a first-team all-conference player. I think he's that talented in terms of a scorer. I don't know if he gets there. He probably most likely on the second team. But I think he's a guy that absolutely needs to put the ball in the basket for Duke this year.
And I'll throw another name out there, Caden Boozer. I mean, that's someone that draft Twitter is starting. He's starting to be like the preseason draft Twitter darling, I've noticed. Obviously, Cam Boozer's twin brother. Andrew, who do you anticipate being, maybe that third fiddle? We already talked about Duke and Louisville. And if they're all the top two, who do you think could emerge as the third? Obviously, John mentioned Virginia as his likely number 3. I think I would agree with that. Andrew and I talk about it all the time, especially since he's been writing the magazine for the ACC. This Virginia team is going to be very different than what you saw under Tony Bennett because Tony Bennett's was so defensively winning games 60-59. This one, they have 5 or 6 guys that shoot 45% from 3. It's just going to be one of the best offenses maybe in the NBA, in the NCAA. Andrew, I don't want to speak for you, but if not Duke and Louisville, is it Virginia number 3 or North Carolina, NC State? There's some options. So what's your sentiment on that?
Yeah, I think, those 3 teams are, I think, the next 3 on the list, right? I think, those are all NCAA tournament quality teams. Listen, North Carolina, obviously, the ups and downs of Hubert Davis have driven that fan base insane. North Carolina is going to be different because they're a much bigger team now. When you look at Visar and Stevenson, I love Bogovic and Wilson, the 2 freshmen. I think they're going to be really good for them. Big question is going to be the perimeter shooting and their point guard play. Can Kyan Evans take that step and become that guy? For me, Virginia's a great pick. My only concern with Virginia, though, is you have so many guys who were number 1 options on their mid-major teams. Can those guys sacrifice enough and give up their roles and say, hey, okay, Malik Thomas is the number 1 guy, because to me, he's a great scorer, what he did at San Francisco with Chris Gerlofson. And, I think he's probably going to be the go-to guy for me. So I think I'm kind of curious to see how Coach Odom gets those guys to gel quickly and, get guys to buy in. I'm going to go with NC State. Listen, I'm a little bit concerned with their lack of size. There is a concern there. Van Allen Lubin at 6'8" playing center is not ideal. They do have a kid from Wyoming, Scotty Abubi, who's, he's a 7-footer at the end of the day. They're going to rely a ton on their wings and guards. Darian Williams, Texas Tech, Terrence Arsenault, Trey Holloman, they're going to rely a ton on their backcourt. But what wins games in college basketball is your backcourt. At the end of the day, that is what wins games. And NC State, to me, with their backcourt of, you have Alvin Breed from McNeese, who came with him. You've got Quadir Copeland, who also has familiarity in the ACC playing at my alma mater. You've got, Arsenault, Trey Holloman. I mean, they are so deep. And you have Matt Abel, who's a freshman that a lot of people seem to really like. I think NC State's got a top 25 talented roster. They're that good. It's just a matter of how much is lack of size going to hurt them in the league. That to me is the key, because the ACC has some big, like Duke is not small. North Carolina is not small. Louisville is certainly not small, with Ali Khalifa coming back and Keshawn Pryor. So I'm going to say NC State. It would not shock me if any of those three teams finish in third place, though. Honestly, I could see a three-way tie. That's how close I think it is between Carolina, NC State, and Virginia.
And another guy, Andrew, that you didn't mention, Paul McNeil. He's another guy who coming into last year was a little bit of a draft Twitter, a lot of a bit actually.
Oh yeah,
draft Twitter darling. Like maybe there's some there's a lot of upside with this roster. Maybe there's some, as John knows in the fantasy sports world, what do they call John? A post type sleeper.
Yeah, post type sleeper. Yeah.
So maybe there's a little bit of that. John, we already talked about Notre Dame as a dark horse team. Andrew, as you're talking to these coaches, doing your research, assembling just your write-ups for this conference, rather, 600 to 675 words may not do a team justice. Who do you think is this, maybe not a sleeper team, but like a team that, maybe not enough people are talking about in the ACC?
Yeah, I'm going to go with SMU.
Okay.
Yeah, I think that's a team that nobody is talking about.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you think about everyone talks about Duke, Louisville, Carolina, Virginia, NC State have these, big name hires. Andy Enfield has done a nice job with his team. Okay. Now, last year, the problem with them was they couldn't beat a high quality team and their non-conference strength of schedule was weak. If we remember. Now, if you look at their roster now, I mean, they bring back Boopy Miller. He was the Wake Forest transfer from a couple of years ago. He is really good. I think he's one of the most underrated guards in the entire country. They bring in Jaron Pierre from Jacksonville State. Very underrated transfer. He averaged 22 points a game in that league. That is a strong league to average 22 points a game in. Sam Walters from Michigan is another, Power 5 experienced guy that always helps. The big guy, Yidoglu, I think is going to be really a force in the ACC. I think that is an underrated guy in the league. Most people, when you think of the bigs, you think about, Boozer and you think about, Visar. This guy is going to be a problem for teams at 7-2. And he averaged 10 points a game last year as a sophomore or as a freshman. So I think this kid is going to be an issue. I think SMU has a legitimate shot to be an NCAA tournament team this year. And that would be huge for a league that has really struggled over the last few years to get teams. And this league needs teams. And I think SMU has a golden opportunity to do that this year.
Andrew, do you read minds?
I'd like to.
That was a perfect segue into my next question.
Sure.
For both of you. How many teams do we see the ACC getting into March Madness this year? Because while we want to say the ACC is a lot better than what it's been in years past, so is the Big Ten. The SEC got 14 teams in last year. The Big 12 got, was considered last year going into the year the best conference in the sport. Obviously, the SEC had something to say about that. But how many teams, and of course, there's a Big East as well. How many, realistic teams do we think get in? What was it last year, John? 4? 4 or 5 last year?
It was 4. It was Clemson, 4. Louisville, North Carolina, and Duke.
Yeah. Okay. Over and under 5.5 outside.
I'll take the under. For me, I think the middle of the league got stronger, but there weren't enough teams that went from the middle to the top or in the middle to the top half tier, if that makes sense. Like I said, I think Notre Dame got better, but is Notre Dame a tournament team? I don't know that they're there yet. Clemson is probably taking a step back this year. Their backcourt just isn't as strong. I think Miami will be in the mix. My concern with Miami is their non-conference strength of schedule is awful. There's just no way around it. SMU is going to be right there. Can they beat the top level teams? We'll see. I think they certainly have the talent to do it, but can they actually do it? Wake Forest has been a team that's been around the bubble the last few years. Can they get over the hump? Syracuse is under a ton of pressure. Can their roster figure it out? There's a lot of possibilities, but I would stick with 5 myself, and the 5 I mentioned before: Duke, Louisville, North Carolina, Virginia, and NC State. I am very comfortable at that number. I know that will not please a lot of fan bases in the ACC, but I do think those teams took steps, just not big enough steps to get to the tournament.
If there was a 6 team you say gets in, would it be SMU?
Yeah, for me, that's who it would be. Yeah, I would take them over Miami only because SMU I like the experience of Andy Enfield. Jay Lucas has never been a head coach at any level. That scares me. When you're a head coach first time at a Power 5 program, taking over for a legend like Jim Larrañaga, who I know wasn't the coach second half of the season, but you're basically taking over for Jim Larrañaga. And I am very nervous for Jay Lucas that this is not – I'm not saying he can't recruit. He can clearly put a roster together, all right? He's got a very talented group, but it's very different when you move 2 inches from associate coach to head coach. It is a massive – just ask Adrian Autry how it's going. It's a massive change, and I'm a little bit concerned that inexperience is going to be a problem for them.
John, how about you? Would you take the over under 5.5? And which teams do you think, if you had to say right now, get in?
Hey, if I got my money on the line, I'm probably taking the under. I think it's, again, 5 teams. Like we said, like we've talked about. I think Duke, Louisville locks. I think there's a very good chance that Virginia and NC State both make it in the tournament. And then let's just face it, if UNC is halfway decent, they're going to be a tournament team also. So that's 5 right there. I don't think that any of those 5 teams would have to win the ACC tournament to be in the NCAA tournament. So that does leave a window open for another team potentially to be in the tournament from the ACC. And if I had to pick, again, SMU. I think SMU is going to be a really good team. I think SMU could be the 3rd best team in this league when it's all said and done. When it comes down to the records. So if I had to guess, I would say SMU. And then, again, one of these years, Wake Forest is going to push it over the hump. One of these years, maybe this is the year for Notre Dame. Maybe, I think a team that we really don't know a whole lot about that could be good this year is Florida State. We don't know what Luke Locks is going to do. We don't know what that squad looks like. I think that's another potential out of nowhere team that could be good, that has done it in the past, as a school, and has a pretty good roster if you're looking at paper. But if it was me, I'm saying 5.
So the ACC is sort of a conference where, yes, it's been down the last few years in terms of bids, but we also saw so many legendary coaches in this conference retire, with Coach K and Roy Williams and Jim Boeheim. Obviously, Mike Gray stepped down a couple years ago. I know I'm missing some of Tony Bennett, obviously.
Leonard Hamilton just stepped down.
Leonard Hamilton, Larrañaga, as Andrew alluded to. So, getting Ryan Odom and getting Will Wade and even maybe Jai Lucas, Jerry's still out. Landon Locks, who knows? But getting, some of these established coaches like Odom and, Will Wade, is going to do wonders for this conference. Andy Enfield as well is still relatively new to that conference. So, I preface that to say, while we are focusing on the ACC this upcoming year, let's talk a little bit about the hot seat. Andrew, as you're writing these conferences, I know there's a little bit of conflict of interest in terms of interviewing some of these coaches, but who could we say is potentially on the hot seat in terms of coaches in the ACC?
The hottest seat is Syracuse. I don't know how else to describe it. I went to school there. I can tell you that fan base right now is on fire with what's going on up there. They've basically been a 500 team the last 4 years. Look, year 1 of Red Autry didn't go as bad as people thought it was going to go. He won 20 games, but year 2 was bad. I can't, winning 14 games. I know Donnie Freeman got hurt. I know Starling got hurt. But realistically, 14-19 is the worst record in that school's history since 1970. I mean, that is a travesty. Now, I will give Alex Klein, their general manager, credit. He has put together a much better team this year. You think about Sadiq White, Kyan Anthony, Starling and Freeman are both back. I think Syracuse can, be a little dangerous. I'm very concerned about the defensive end of the floor for them. But I think if Syracuse doesn't make the tournament, I think this is the end of Red Autry. I really do. It's a shame because he's an alum, and I think people want to see him succeed. And obviously, I don't root for Adrian Autry to get fired. But it's just been a tough road. Anytime you're the guy replacing the legend, it is so difficult. But what John Shire's done at Duke is absolutely remarkable. I mean, people don't understand how hard that is with what John Shire's dealt with. Hubert Davis has struggled with it. I know he made the national title game his first year, but it's been kind of up and down.
He made the national title game as what, an 8 seed though?
Yes.
7 or 8. Yeah, but
yes.
Either way, yeah.
Yeah, but still, I think the hottest seed is Syracuse, without a doubt. Virginia Tech is another interesting one. I actually like Mike Young. Like, I think he can coach. Now, it's a weird situation because financially, I don't think they're in a great place in terms of NIL. Like, it's not like the first, 10 or 15 schools. You're not thinking of Virginia Tech when it comes to basketball. But I know publicly they made a statement saying that the NIL was increased. I actually like his team. I don't think they're that bad. They have the kid Avdilas, who I think is going to be really good for them. Mm-hmm. Really good. And, they got Hansberry from West Virginia. They brought in Chester Frazier to be an assistant on the sideline there. I think Pitt's another one to keep an eye on with Jeff Capel. I spoke to him last week. He's pretty optimistic with his team, bringing the 2 kids in from Iowa State. He's got Barry Dunning Jr. from South Alabama. But when you lose Jalen Lowe in the portal to Kentucky, and then you lose Ish Leggett, it's just tough sledding. I don't know how else to say it. Unfortunately, they couldn't really replace that talent level. It's too much to ask. BC's another one, but at the end of the day, that's such a difficult job. I mean, it's a hard job. They have no money. I mean, it is brutal in Chestnut Hill. But I do think Syracuse by far is the hottest seed. And people want to talk about Steve Forbes. And I think Steve Forbes is a great coach. I think he's done a very good job at Wake Forest. But at some point, you're going to have to make the tournament. He knows that, and we'll just have to see what happens with him this year. But I think Syracuse by far is the hottest seed in that conference.
John, same question. Any coaches in the ACC, that are on the hot seat, or any names maybe Andrew didn't mention?
The funny thing about ACC that you kind of alluded to earlier is that a lot of these coaches are new.
Yeah.
Almost too new to be on the hot seat at a lot of these programs, or like you said, they're up against the wall at the program they're at, with NIL money, because there is a big discrepancy, I believe, from the top to the bottom in this conference as far as available NIL funds. I think Syracuse is not just one of the hottest seats in the ACC. It's probably one of the hottest seats in the country, I would have to say. And that's a job that's been a good job in the past. I think that a lot of guys would be interested in. And other than that, I mean, look, UNC. I think Hubert Davis's seat is not safe. And I think that they're going to want to. That's a fan base that's going to want to see improvement this year. I think they do see improvement this year. I think this is a better team this year than they had last year.
Yeah, I do too.
So I'm not super. I wouldn't be super concerned about my job if I was Hubert Davis. I think they're gonna, probably gonna be a tournament team again. So what do you do?
For what it's worth, Hubert Davis just signed a 6-year extension. Again, I know that may not mean anything, but it's worth noting for having this conversation.
Yeah, I mean, the other thing with Carolina is I think as long as they get in and he wins a tournament game, I think he's fine. I don't see any reason to fire him. I get it. Carolina fans want to be a 1 or 2 seed in the Final Four. I get all of that. And what Shire's done at Duke is not making it any easier. But at the end of the day, if you're making the tournament, you're in the tournament. I mean, what more can you ask for? You're in the tournament. I know the number next to your name doesn't look great. I get that. But at least you're in the tournament. Syracuse hasn't been in the tournament since 2021. Okay? 4 years of disaster for them. And that's my alma mater. Okay? And I want to see Adrian Autry succeed and do great, but I'm telling you, that seat is so freaking hot right now. when an athletic director puts out a public statement, that is like the kiss of death.
Yeah.
Okay, that is the kiss of death for Red Autry. He's got to make the tournament or it's done. I don't know how else to say it for him.
They've missed the tournament more than they made the tournament since joining the ACC.
Correct.
For what that's worth.
Yes.
John, I know Andrew and I interrupted you on Hubert Davis. Do you have anything else to add?
No, I mean, nothing else to say. I think that's it. And then we talked about, Steve Forbes. That's another guy that, it's eventually they're gonna, they want to win. But again, is there another guy that can come in there and do better at Wake Forest than Steve Forbes has done so far? I'm not sure. He's an excellent recruiter. I mean, he's been able to recruit some great teams and retain a lot of great players on that team.
He's a good developer too.
He's a good developer.
Tyree
He was on the short list for Texas A&M.
Yeah. I mean, the one guy, if I would say there's 2 seats that can get hot. I don't think, I don't know. I'm not saying they're going to get fired this year, but if Notre Dame and Georgia Tech have slow years, I think you could start to see the hot meter start to rise a little bit there. Notre Dame is not only a big name in basketball, it's a big name in college athletics.
Yeah.
Okay. That's one of the biggest names out there, maybe the biggest. I know basketball is not a primary sport for them. We know it's football. Everybody knows that. But at the end of the day, you can't be finishing bottom half of the league if you're Notre Dame. It just can't happen. And I think Shrewsbury is too good of a coach to allow that to happen this year. Their backcourt is very good. And I like the freshman they're bringing in. And Carson Tout from Northern Arizona is very underrated transfer from the Big Sky. I don't think he's going to have a hard time at all transitioning. And Georgia Tech, look, they got hit hard in the portal. I mean, you lose Nate George, and you lose Duncan Powell. I mean, that's a big blow. And he's got a lot of freshmen on that team. It's probably going to be a growing, developing year for Georgia Tech. But we've seen Damon Stoudemire win games he's not supposed to. I mean, they beat Duke, I think, one year. They beat Carolina. They beat Clemson last year in a triple overtime game at Clemson. So, as long as Georgia Tech doesn't bottom out, I think he's going to be fine. But I think those are 2 seats that can get a little warm.
I just got a text message from someone watching. Next time, please comment. But is Marcus Burden going to lead the ACC in scoring?
Yes.
Yes, I agree.
Yeah. I think he's first team all ACC. I really do. I think he's
maybe ACC player of the year.
Yeah, I think he's in the discussion. But again, in order for him to really get up there, Notre Dame has to be good. Because if you're 10th in the ACC, the media doesn't care about you.
Yeah,
that's the whole thing. You've got to be up there. My pick, listen, I don't want to spoil the magazine. My pick ACC player of the year is Cam Boozer. I just think the kid, he's on the best team. He's the best player in the country, probably, barring, he's up there. He's going to be in discussion for the number 1 pick. He would be my pick. I do think Marcus Burton will be all first team ACC, though, when it's said and done.
I tend to agree. Andrew, as you said, you've had the opportunity to interview 3 coaches so far on the ACC.
Yeah.
Well, 2 and then Conrad. Yeah, but you heard at least Conrad's interview with.
I did.
Because obviously you're writing Stanford
yes.
with Kyle Smith. Are there any insightful conversations you had, ACC specifically,
sure.
in terms of speaking to any of these coaches?
Yeah, I think the one thing I got out of it is they're competitive dudes. And they are fighting for players tooth and nail. It's hard, especially when you don't have NIL. Take Cal, for example. Mark Madsen's got nothing to work with. I mean, it is so hard. And honestly, his team is not bad. I actually Chris Bell can shoot the lights out. When he's plugged in. Day Ames at Virginia is a good point guard. I like Milos Ilic, the kid from Loyola, Maryland, who they picked up. He's going to be good. I think, it's just hard. These coaches have to do so much. They got to fundraise. They got to recruit. They got to go into the portal. They got to deal with agents. It's a lot. And, I think the one thing you hear from all these coaches is optimism. They're all optimistic. They all think they can do great things. But, unfortunately, it's all talk right now. And then when you get to the regular season and you start playing games, that's when everything starts to, they start to go through adversity. But, yeah, Mark Madsen was great interview. Really personable guy. I've never met a guy with a ton of energy, not as much as Pastner, but Mark Madsen had a ton of energy. Jeff Capel, I spoke to him about his team. I think with them, I think he kind of feels like there's an unknown a little bit with his team. I think he's excited, but I think he also sounded like a little nervous. Like he's like, you know what? Like we need to be better than what we've been.
Yeah.
And, and the ACC, like he knows his competition got better. He knows that. They may say they don't pay attention to the rosters. I don't believe that. Of course they're paying attention. Yeah, and Kyle Smith, listen, he's a very smart guy. Let me tell you, he's a nerdball guy, analytics guy. His team is young. They're going to go through some developmental phase this year, but I think he is a really good coach. I mean, he's taken some hard jobs. Columbia, San Francisco, Washington State. Those are hard jobs, and he's had success everywhere he's gone. And last year they lose Reynaud, who's obviously an NBA draft pick now. They lose Osiah Sellers to St. John's. So I think it's going to be a development year for Stanford, but I do believe in a couple of years' time, Kyle Smith will have that program back in no time.
Yeah. Cal's the one that stuck out to me, not only because Mad Dog is such an infectious personality, but like I'm kind of into Cal's roster. Another guy that you mentioned was Vitus Petraitis. Former Air Force, Air Force player. But I dig it. I definitely dig it.
I think he's put together a team that nobody talks about Cal. Everybody automatically puts Cal at the bottom. Okay, they always do that because they have no athletic budget, and they really have no tradition. I mean, they've had 2 NBA players, Jaylen Brown and Jason Kidd. Nobody else knows Cal, but I think Chris Bell can do well there. He's from California. The guy's home now. Day-Day Ames has Power 5 experience at Virginia. So
and Kansas State.
So like I don't hate Cal's roster. It's just Mark Madsen has nothing to work with, and that is very hard when you have no NIL. It is so difficult in today's game.
John, anything to add in terms of the ACC or any follow-up questions?
No, I think I'm good. Yeah.
Hit me. Hit me.
No, I'm jealous you got to interview Mad Dog. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, he's, he was a great interview. I mean, he's got a ton of energy. He's a passionate guy. He's very optimistic about his team. I know he lost losing Stojakovic was huge. That's a big loss. And losing Wilkerson to Georgia is a huge loss. But you know what? I don't think they're as bad as people think I actually think they're going to be okay. It's like I said, like when you're Boston College or Stanford or Cal or Georgia Tech and you just don't have money, it is so hard to keep players. And it's hard to keep replenishing time and time and time again. It is not everybody's Duke. Not everybody is, Notre Dame or Syracuse, who are big name brands. It's just hard. But yeah, Madsen was great. I will say a team that I think is being slept on is Clemson. I think everybody's writing them off because their backcourt kind of took a hit, obviously, losing Hunter and Zachary. But I'm telling you, Carter Welling is good. The kid from Utah Valley. Nick Davidson from Nevada is a really good player. And we all know Brad Brownell can coach. Sweet 16 and Elite 8, back-to-back years. I know they lost a lot. It would not shock me if Brad Brownell has that team in the top 6 or 7 and they're in the tournament. It would not shock me one bit.
Me either. Because, the truth is the guys that we're talking about now that they're missing out on are not guys we were talking about 2 years ago or 3 years ago.
Exactly. Yeah, I think, you can never rule them out because we all know he can coach.
Yeah.
He is a very good coach. And that's the thing with the ACC. Like Steven said, you lost a lot of Hall of Fame guys. It's taken some programs a little while to kind of get their footing. Some of them are going through rebuilds right now. So, yeah, it's going to be an interesting year in this league. It just comes down to how many teams can they get in, and they might need some luck. They might need some Big 12 teams to struggle or SEC teams to struggle or even the Big East. They might need some of these teams to fall off a little bit just to get another team in.
So I do want to move on to the OVC momentarily, but we do have a question from Matt, Who_5 on Twitter. Go follow him. Favorite ACC recruits or transfers this year? I'll open the floor to both of you.
You want me to take it, John?
Yeah, go for it.
So I'm going to rule out Cam Boozer because I think he's the obvious choice.
Mm-hmm.
Darian Williams is an obvious choice. I really like Visar at North Carolina.
Mm-hmm.
I think he's going to be really good this year. I liked him at Arizona for Tommy Lloyd. I thought he played well. I think that's a guy that's really going to do some damage in the league this year. I really, honestly, for Syracuse, I really like Nate George. I do. I think he's an underrated point guard. He was very good for Georgia Tech last year, and Syracuse really struggled at that position. Jaquan Carlos was a disaster for them. Nate George has Power 5 experience. He's going to set up guys more. Remember, J.J. Starling had way too much on his plate last year. So I think that's going to be huge for them. And I love Carson Tout at Notre Dame. I think this kid is going to be a force down low, and I think people are not going to know what to do because he's coming from the Big Sky, and everyone's going to say, well, he's from the Big Sky. It's going to take some time. I'm telling you, it is not going to take long for Carson Tout to make an impact at Notre Dame.
I know who John's answer is going to be.
Go ahead, John.
Oh, yeah, who's that?
Malik Grinnell.
Hit nail on the head. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm a big fan of Malik Renault. He's a great basketball player. I think he's going to be excellent at Miami. I mean, he's going to be the guy there, I believe.
I agree.
I think he's going to make a huge impact on that team. I like Robert McCray at FSU.
Yeah.
I think that's another great. I mean, he's excellent college basketball player. I think he's probably going to be the leader on that team. Probably going to be the guy that has the ball in his hands most of the time. I think he's ready to play in this league. Oh man, there's so many.
I mean, Jaron Pierre at SMU.
Oh, Jaron Pierre, of course. Yeah.
He's going to be really good. I mean, him and Miller next to each other is going to be a tough out for a lot of teams to come. That's going to be a tough out.
And there's obviously all the Virginia guys, but my favorite is Ryan Conwell. I saw the dude give Marquette 38 points, and Shaka Smart could not stop him in the Big East tournament. I know Xavier lost by 2 that game, but he was incredibly good. So I know they have a pretty crowded backcourt with Malik Brown and Isaac McNeely and Conwell and Adrian Woolley, but cream rise to the crop. I think he might be the best player on the top 10 team in the country this year.
No, yeah, I think that's a really good pick. He was a scorer for Xavier. I mean, he really knew what he was doing. And, I just, again, I have a couple concerns with Louisville. I mean, my first thing is they have so many guys in the backcourt. Again, similar to Virginia, can they sacrifice enough? And then the front court, you have Khalifa and Pryor both coming. I think they're both coming off injury. How does that work? Are they the same player? Are they not the same player? So, and again, Louisville fans, they're happy to be back, obviously where they are, but there's pressure on Pat Kelsey to win in the NCAA tournament. He's going to have to win in the tournament because last year they no-showed against Creighton in that first game. That first NCAA tournament game, that 12-15 slot, they absolutely did not show up for that game. So Pat Kelsey, there is going to be pressure because I expect Louisville to be a second weekend team. I think they can get to the Sweet 16. They can be a top 4 protected seed, and you cannot lose that first game because that first game is going to be difficult, whether it's Liberty, whether it's, Charleston, whoever that 13 seed is going to be, there's going to be very difficult for Pat Kelsey. They need to win that game, and I think they have to get minimum to the second weekend for this to be a successful year for them.
Charleston revenge game against Pat Kelsey would be a fun one.
Yeah, it could.
Yeah. Okay, let's move on to the OVC on the Sean. You have any follow-ups?
No, so I had one more deeper. I like Cooper Schweiger at Wake Forest.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
He was incredible at Valpo last year. Great scorer, rebounder. He's going to have a ton of opportunities, I think, in that. He's a Steve Forbes guy, I think. I mean, he's has great opportunity in that offense.
Yeah, it's funny. They're the team I've actually seen the most difference of opinion on. I've seen people pick them as low as 12th, and some people pick them as high as 5th. Yeah. They're a team of unknown. I don't think we really know what they are. They lost Salas, they lost Reed. They're going to be an interesting team, and there's a lot of pressure on Forbes, right? We know this. So I tend to lean on the coaching, with the roster. If you ask me, would I rather have a more talented roster and a not so great coach, or a talented coach and a not so great roster? I'm going to lean coach over roster because I know Steven and I have talked about that in the Big East with Providence and Villanova. So for me, I'm going to lean on Wake because I trust Steve Forbes to put them in the mix, even though the roster may not be as talented as years past.
Okay, so the OVC. And Andrew, this is where John and I are obviously going to have to lean on you a little bit more because you're doing the write-ups. Mm-hmm. OVC in last year in KenPom, they were the 28th best league out of 31. Only 3 teams were worse. And we've seen teams like, one of the conference John's writing, Belmont and Murray State used to be in the OVC. Now they're in the MVC. And this conference, outside of traditionally Morehead State, has really stumbled to the bottom, I would say.
Yeah.
Andrew, you could correct me if I'm wrong, but to me, as an outsider who isn't as familiar of this conference or writing it, it seems to be Little Rock and everyone else. In my opinion, Little Rock, despite being in such a weak conference, is actually one of the better mid-majors this year. I think Little Rock might win the most conference games out of any team in college basketball this year. They're going to be up there with Gonzaga, in my opinion. Am I wrong to think that it's Little Rock and everyone else, or is there someone else who could really compete?
Little Rock on paper is the best team in the conference. KK Robinson is coming back. He didn't play last year with a knee injury, and he averaged 16 points a game. The previous year they bring back Jonathan Lawson, 15 points a game. So they're bringing back some high level scoring to their group. Coach Walker's obviously has a ton of coaching experience. You think about his NBA coaching experience, and then you think about what he's done at Little Rock. To me, SEMO State is going to be very dangerous.
Okay.
I got a chance to speak to Coach Korn. Great guy, first of all. He is really excited about his team, and I think they are extremely motivated because last year did not go the way they won the regular season. But we all know you have to win the tournament. They didn't do that. I think they're not saying they're on a revenge tour, but I think there's a little bit more extra juice for SEMO. I am picking Little Rock to win the preseason. I can't go against their talent. But if you ask me who I think is going to win the auto bid, I actually think SEMO gets it done. I really like their team. They have a lot of continuity, which is huge in a league where they have no money. Yeah. That is a big deal. To bring back 7 guys from your team last year who were contributors, that is a big deal. Coach Korn has been in the tournament before. I think they were in 2 years ago. That is a dangerous team. Edwardsville is another dangerous team. They represented last year in the league. Coach Baroni, got a chance to talk to him also. Great guy. Very excited about his group and what they're bringing. Look, this league has obviously lost a lot. You talked about it, losing teams like Belmont and Murray State. And the one thing I got from this league, from these coaches, is they want to get the reputation of this league back up a little bit. It's frankly been disappointing for them. I think they want to get this league back to, relevance, and not being in the bottom 5, I think, 5 years in a row or whatever it is. So they'd like to improve their league status a little bit. I think Little Rock winning the league would help them quite a bit, considering I agree with you. I think if you ask me like where I would put them in a bracket, they're probably a 15 seed, maybe they crack 14 potentially, but I would say a 15 seed is probably safe. But I think SEMO is going to be an issue. I think Edwardsville is also, I think that's clearly the top 3 for me in that league. But yeah, I think Little Rock is the best team in the league.
The poor 2 seed that has to play Little Rock in the first round in the NCAA tournament.
Yeah, it's going to be a tough out. I mean, again, Coach Walker has a lot of experience. And, KK Robinson's a 16-point-a-game scorer. I mean, that's not easy to defend. I don't care what league he's in. That's not easy to defend. So, yeah, I feel bad for that 2 seed. And it very well could be Duke, John. It very well could be.
Very well could be.
Okay, Andrew. So as we alluded to when we first started, there were 8 coaches you've had the opportunity to interview so far through the OVC out of the 11 teams. Our goal, obviously, is for you to go 11 for 11 and, so we can secure the other 3. What type of – I know you said you talked to Coach Baroni, you talked to Coach Walker. What type of insight, I mean, in a conference like this that's traditionally been down the last 5 years, like, what can you tell us from what you've learned from talking to 8 different coaches in this league?
Well, first of all, it was an honor to talk to those guys. Anytime you get to talk to a coach of a college program, it's a great experience. That being said, I think the one thing every coach kept saying was continuity is huge in a league where we struggle to keep guys. And you look at teams like Lindenwood, who was able to keep Jones, the freshman of the year. Little Rock was able to keep KK Robinson. They were able, a lot of these teams were able to keep some double-digit scores on their team, and that's huge. that is going to help your league improve their standing. That was the one thing I kept hearing was we need to find a way to keep our guys. We need to find a way, whether it's success on the team, whether it's NIL, whether it's whatever it is, we need to find a way to make sure our league does not fall any lower than it already is. But, a lot of those guys, they're optimistic. I think a lot of coaches believe the same thing we are, that Little Rock is the top. But, the number one seed doesn't win the NCAA tournament berth every year. And, a tournament's a crazy thing. You can get hot for 3 games and get the berth. I mean, we've seen like you could see a 6 seed getting a berth. I think St. Francis PA did that in the NEC. They were like the 5 seed and won it. So I think this league is actually I think you have those 3. I actually really like Tennessee State as well. Nolan Smith is now the coach, as John knows. He played at Duke. He was an assistant for Penny Hardaway at Memphis. He got the job kind of late, but they have some talent there. He was able to keep it. He put his staff together. Might be a little chaotic early just because, like when you're a new coach and everything kind of goes a little fast. But I do think Tennessee State is a team to keep an eye on. I really like what Lindenwood has. I think Coach Gerdeman's done an awesome job. Southern Indiana has the number 1 transfer class in the league, and they finished last year. So that's going to be interesting. And let's not forget, Tennessee Tech is changing leagues. They're going from the OVC to the SoCon. I just wonder how much of a distraction that is for them. Like when you're trying to change leagues and it's all chaos, I don't know where they're at, to be honest with you. But it's going to be interesting to see how this league plays out. I don't think it's as bad as people say it is right this year. I actually think they're better this year than last year because they were able to keep a lot of the double-digit scores on their teams. I think the coaches worked really hard in the portal. That was the one thing I kept hearing was we tried, we put in the effort, and hopefully the results come out this year. That's all I can say is hopefully the results pan out for them.
Tennessee State, for what it's worth, is returning 3 double-digit scorers, 3 starters. Looks like 6 overall scholarship rotation guys from last year.
Yeah, like I said, the concern I have, though, is a new coach hired late. Think about it. A kid graduates in May, a kid leaves in May, right, to, go to off-season workouts, and then like a month later, they're changing coaches.
Yeah.
It's just kind of chaotic. I think it's going to take a little bit of time for Coach Smith to kind of get his foot down there, but I do think eventually it's going to work. How long that takes, I don't know. That depends on how much the players buy into what he's selling. But I think he's ready for a job. He's been in the system for a while now at a bunch of different places. He was at Louisville, I think. He was also at Memphis. He was going to go to Memphis with Penny Hardaway. So I think he's ready. It's a good league to start in. It's a small league. I always prefer coaches starting at the mid-major level over the high major level, like what Jay Lucas did. I would have rather have seen him gone to a mid-major program and start there than say start at Miami and feel all the pressure right away. So I applaud Nolan Smith for what he's doing. But I think he's got a good team. I do. I think they can absolutely win the league. I think it'd be a great story if he won the league. I know Duke fans would be thrilled for him, but we'll see how it plays out. But I do think this league is a little bit deeper than last year. And I do think this is a league that is desperately trying to improve their reputation.
Okay. Meanwhile, everyone, when you're looking at this, go check out the link to purchase the full magazine. Pre-order. It will be out October 13th. We're a little over a month away. Link, if it's not in this video, if you're watching on X, just go to our Twitter bio. You'll be able to find it. YouTube, it's in the bio. I know that because I put it in there. But go check it out. I'm telling you, it'll be well worth the $12. I'm going to give a couple minutes for any last-minute comments to come in on either the ACC or the OVC. John, anything to add on the OVC in terms of as I said, you're doing the Missouri Valley. There's a lot of former teams like Belmont and Murray State that were highly successful OVC teams. Just from doing 2 of the better high majors, the Missouri Valley and the CAA for the magazine, is there any takeaways, you could take, or even anything you learned from interviewing mid-major coaches that you think could apply to the OVC?
No, I mean, I think a lot of the, talking to the guys in the CAA is a lot like talking to the guys in the OVC.
Yeah.
Especially where, they're talking about, we're the only ones that are recruiting freshmen. We're developing these players. It is so important. That's why, you do look like a team like SEMO, and the minutes they're able to bring back is really astounding. I think that's a big standout for me. If I'm looking through a roster sheet, when I see, multiple guys with 20 plus minutes a game coming back for any team, especially in a conference like this, I think that's a big sign. I agree. I think the top teams in this conference are the top teams in this conference. But it's interesting to me looking at a team like Southern Indiana, who brought in some pretty good transfers, as guys that have high major experience, even or higher mid major experience, and basically flipped an entire roster. So that's another thing that kind of makes it fun, I think, at this level. Is that every year, you never really know what you're going to get. So I'm kind of excited to see how the OVC plays out. I'm in North Carolina, so a lot of these teams are close to me. A short drive away. So I guess kind of a question I had is, what about the OVC as far as scheduling non-con games? Which teams have interest?
It's obviously they're the bye game in some cases. I know when I spoke to, I believe it was Kyle Gerdeman, if I'm correct, it was Lindenwood, and they were talking, and him and I spoke about this, about how we don't want to be the bye game. We'd like to get our own bye games if we can. And, again, it goes back to like getting the league back up to where it can get. Now, obviously losing Belmont, Murray State, that hurts. There's no way around that. I do, I know Lindenwood's opening night game is in Lubbock against Texas Tech. I do know that. I know when I spoke to UT Martin, I spoke to Coach Schulman. He was my first interview. They're playing UNLV. They're playing Florida State. And then he had like some unique scheduling things. Like he's playing Florida State because Leonard Hamilton went to UT Martin, and they're kind of like having kind of like a reunion game there with Coach Hamilton. So that was pretty cool. He has a very strong relationship with Josh Pastner. It's interesting kind of how they do their schedules down there. It's definitely unique considering they're such a small league, and they're the bye game. That's why I don't really look at records with a small league like that, because you got to figure they're playing 4 or 5 Power 5 schools. They're probably not going to win those games more than likely. But it was definitely interesting, because I asked a lot of the coaches about the non-conference schedule, like how do you want to schedule tough? Do you want to schedule soft? And they said, they want to get a schedule to the point where they feel like they're ready for conference play. And that's kind of the gist I got. They kind of avoided the question, really, but it's not like the ACC where the non-conference schedules get magnified. Like Miami, who has probably the softest non-conference I've ever seen, as opposed to like an Alabama who has a really tough non-conference schedule. But some of the OVC teams, they like to schedule a lot of Power 5 teams. Some don't. I know most of them are playing a non-D1 program. Just to feel comfortable, I guess, about themselves. And I do know some coaches, I know Nate Oates does this. Some of the OVC coaches mentioned that they are going to play games where their seniors are from. So they can kind of like go back to their hometowns, and so that's kind of a cool, unique thing that they're doing. But yeah, the scheduling is definitely different. It's definitely a little bit different than, say, a Power 5 school, or even, like a Conference USA school, or a WCC school. It's definitely very different.
Yeah, I think it depends on the team too. Like I talked to a CAA coach who, one of the upper echelon Colonial teams, who said, it's hard for us to get a game, because a lot of the bigger teams aren't wanting to pay us to come play, because we've been tough. Whereas on the other end, I talked to a coach today from the MVC who said, we got 5 true road games against tough opponents to begin the season. He's like, that's not really what we want to do, but it's kind of where we're at, because it's what we have to do.
Yeah, I think that the Power 5 teams are afraid to lose.
Yeah, that's it.
Like in your league, like if you look at, again, I don't mean to get away from the OVC, but if you look at Charleston, it's going to be hard for them to get games. The OVC won't have that much as difficult of a time. Little Rock might have a
Little Rock, yeah.
Yeah, they're the one team. SEMO's definitely not in the – I know SEMO's playing Missouri. First night, they're playing Mizzou. If you don't think SEMO's not going to get up for that game, they are going to get up for
I
that
bet.
game. And Dennis Gate better not sleep on that team because they could, if they lose that game, that is going to be bad.
That's the type of game that causes you to miss the NCAA tournament.
Correct.
As good as SEMO is, like for the OVC, like I'm not disparaging them. Yeah.
And we've all seen this where a Power 5 team thinks they can just walk it over and they lose. We've seen this happen before. Would not shock me if an OVC team pulled one of those rabbits out of a hat this year.
Absolutely. I'm just looking to see if Little Rock posted a non-conference schedule yet. They haven't, for what it's worth.
Yeah, I'm not surprised. A lot of these schools are waiting. I know UT Martin just posted theirs a few days ago. A lot of schools are waiting, but they are starting to slowly trickle out, a lot of them. So, yeah, I mean, the OVC should be a good league. Like I said, I think it's a deeper league than people give it credit for. I think the coaches are motivated to get it back to where it is. And the ACC, we'll see. We'll see what happens with some of those big teams. Can Notre Dame make a run? Syracuse, Wake, can some of those teams get over the hump, or is it going to be, all right, we got to move on and that's it? It's going to be, the ACC to me is probably the most interesting league in the country because they need that league to get it together.
Yeah. Okay. John, anything to add on either the ACC or OVC?
No, I don't think so.
Okay. Andrew,
the Big Ten ACC Challenge is going to be very interesting this year.
Oh, yeah. That is for sure. That is going to be fun.
There might be some decision makers right there in that tournament come.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, there's going to be some big ones. So. Yeah, that challenge is going to be interesting because, obviously the other league has been remarkable. I mean, just what they've done is insane. And the ACC has to put up a fight. If they don't, it's going to be ugly. National media is going to turn it. It's not going to end well for the ACC. They've got to have some sense of fight. Like when Miami goes to Ole Miss, Miami needs to find a way to win that game. You've got to find it. Because I don't think again, not to go towards other leagues, but I just don't think Ole Miss is that as strong as years past with Chris Beard. So to me, that's an opportunity for Miami to go in there, get a statement win for your program, get the players to believe in what you're selling. But we'll see. It's going to be interesting. I totally agree. Sorry, Steven. I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, I was going to say super insightful in terms of not only what coaches are telling you, but just, OVC, like that's the conference that doesn't get a lot of coverage outside of like those schools. So definitely fun having, the ACC as a high major, OVC as a low major, as our first episode doing something like this. Okay, that's pretty much all I have. So if either of you have any final thoughts before we sign off? No,
I just want to thank the guys who are working on the magazine. You guys are doing an awesome job. Go buy it. It's $12. Please do me a favor. You all have $12. I know you do. So go buy it. These two guys are working their butts off. Covering a lot of different leagues. These guys are working. We're interviewing coaches, getting the best insight we can get. And, we'd appreciate it if you guys go out and buy it.
Of course. And for what it's worth, a lot of the coaches we have been interviewing have been getting off of interviews with us and then immediately, literally when I say immediately, within 5 minutes, buying the magazine because, they know the competition is buying it and they know that, we know. I've talked to a lot of coaches that I asked them, what's your overall sentiment of the conference? And they're like, honestly, you probably know better than I do. Like they're actually actively using it to help get intel on their opponents in their conference.
Yeah. I mean, it's funny you bring that up because when I was on the phone with Mark Madsen, he's like, I buy everything because I want to know about the other teams in my league. I want to know what players they have, where they came from. Because the thing is that he's probably thinking, maybe I can get them for Cal, it would not shock me if coaches buy this stuff just to scout other teams to try to recruit their players. Because that's how it is today. It's, it's crazy.
Yeah.
But yeah, Mark. Yeah. So go buy it. Do me a favor. $12, please. I can't ask anymore. These guys have done a tremendous job, especially the two I'm on with. These guys work their butts off. Just go ahead and go buy it.
For what it's worth, I think Andrew is leading the pack in terms of coaches he's interviewed to buy the magazine.
Well, when you bother people as much as I do with texts and emails, you would know why. I'm leading.
So he's a good salesman. He's getting his fair share commission, but there we go. Okay. This concludes this episode. You guys are either watching this on the Center Hub's YouTube channel or X page. So again, we're going to be live every Tuesday and every Thursday, 7 p.m. Eastern. Next week, next episode, which is Thursday, we're going to be doing the WCC and MEAC with Tuck Clary from HeatCheck. He is a contributor on this Center Hub publication, but friend of the YouTube channel, Tuck Clary, of course. Otherwise, I think we're pretty good. Again, go purchase the magazine. It is $12. It'll be out October 13th, which is Columbus Day, so you'll have that entire day to get caught up. And you'll have a couple weeks leading up to November 3rd tip-off for the season to get started. So myself, John, Andrew, we appreciate all 349 of you that watched tonight with us, or actively watching. And we will talk to you guys next episode, which is, again, Thursday. Be on the lookout. Like, review, subscribe, all that good stuff. Thank you guys for listening, and we are off.